Ka huri ki tētahi atu rōpū e whakatūtū puehu ana. Ko te poari āture Maori o ākarana, tērā I tika ana kia hāpai I te taha Maori, I te Auckland Supercity. Engari, kua tūtuki tā rātou I manako ai? Kei tō Jody taha te heamana o te poari a David Taipari.
Tēnā koe, David. Thank you for coming on to Marae Investigates.
Tēnā koe, Jody. It's my pleasure.
First of all, can you tell me exactly how did you get your job as chairman of the Maori Statutory Board?
Well, the job was through a process of appointment through my peers as fellow board members. After a lengthy process of selection process through the iwi selection body, where 7 mana whenua and 2 mata waka people were appointed to the board, and of that 9, myself as chair and Patience Te Ao as deputy chair.
You've come under immense criticism so far. Why do you think that is?
I don't necessarily agree with that. I feel that it's just a new thing that we're facing, and I think people need to become more educated about the purpose and the functions of the board. And I think probably there's a fair amount of ignorance out there in terms of what the board's about. I find it interesting because the legislation is probably the smallest piece of legislation I've ever come across, quite easy to read, and clearly defines the role of the board.
Are you saying that you're not aware of all the criticism towards you?
Well, I'm aware of support and I'm aware of comments that question the board, but I don't necessarily accept that there's criticism of the board, because criticism can only be based on fact, and I've seen heard a lot of things being said, but not based on fact.
What about the criticism about members not turning up to meetings?
Well, that's totally off the mark.
You say it's not true?
No, I say it's not true because simply the process of appointment to the committee was finally resolved in March. We were then late provided with schedules. The schedules have continually changed. We were sent all the schedules to Auckland Council email addresses, which none of us have. So we were left in the dark. I've missed one meeting, and that's because I got 1 day's notice, and I've got a pretty busy life, so I wish I could jump to attention, as someone says, the next day, but I've not missed a meeting since, nor have my fellow board members. So I think...
What about the money, the cost, the fact that you took legal action against the council and people complained that you're using taxpayer funds for a taxpayer issue? Well,
again, the council was tasked with providing reasonable funding under legislation. And reasonable funding is in good faith. When one party doesn't act in good faith, there needs to be some type of arbitration. We sought a declaratory judgment, which would be a non-confrontational process between the two parties. In the end, it turned out that we were going to go by ourselves, so we chose judicial review. Thankfully, good heads came together, and the matter of the funding agreement was resolved in April.
And so what are you doing?
What are we doing?
Yeah.
We've been doing quite a lot since the 15th of November. Considering we didn't have proper funding until April, we've established a permanent secretariat, which now does all the work for the board. The board has set up its policies, its plans, its procedures, and we've already initiated scoping briefs on the welfare and well-being of Māori in the region, so we need to do a fundamental research there. So that we can evidence why we think and where we think the priorities for Māori are. And a second component of that requirement by legislation is an audit of the council and its compliance with the Tiriti o Waitangi principles. And
are the priorities for Māori on Queen Street? Is that why you're having a new flash office there?
Queen Street? We're not having a flash office at all. If you had a look at it, you'd see that it's no different than most other offices. It's exactly what the local boards have been provided for. So we're getting no more, no less than any other party.
Okay, let's have a look at this kohanga story.
Sure.
Kia ora, ko Dana Raharaha tōku ingoa. He kaia ko au I roto I te kohanga reo o te rangi Māria. Rua te kaumārima tau mātau e haere ana I roto I tēnei kaupapa.
I tīmata mai te kohana reo o rangi Māria I nā tau waru te kaumāono o tērā rautau, hei wāhi ako Māori. He kaupapa I whakaarahia hei whakatutuki I ngā wawata o te huna Māori e noho ana ki te tona o Tāmaki Makaurau. I te tau 2008 I pau te whakaaetana rihi a te kohana reo o te rangi Māria. I taua wā anō I te hiahia te whānau o rangi Māria ki te whakapaipai I a rātau whare. Engari ko te whakahoki a te kauni hera mo te rihi, Kua whakatauria tērā wāhi hei tauna waka mo te huna e hopu ana I te trainer.
On moral grounds, that is just truly a kick in the teeth. You know, we're just uprooting these tamariki and we're for cars to be parked.
Kua whakapaukaha te whānau o te kōhana ki te whakahau I tō rātau rihi. I tai ātinana rātau ki te inoi atu ki te koro matua Arlene Brown, enari auare ake. Kua ono marama I nāenei te roa e haere ana nā mahia te kaunihera matua o tāmaki makaurau. Nari kei te ranirua tonu nā whakaaro mō nā mahi a te poari Maori. Kei te marama a Danelle kua tū he poari me tana mōhio ko David Taipari te hea mana. So Daniel, if Dave Taipari was here, what would you say to him?
Basically, if we could have some certainty on what our future holds, for people like me, I was one of the first foundation mokopuna of this kohanga, so this is a part of my whakapapa, and my daughter is in the same kohanga as well, and this is a part of her whakapapa as well, and we just would like to know what is going to happen to this place and what the future holds for ourselves as well.
A park and ride replacing a kohanga, really? Is that going to happen?
In terms of the board finding out in the last 48 hours of the matter, I've set about for an investigation. I've already spoken to the kohanga reo people, understood their plight, and I put into gear with council investigations through properties and through transport to ascertain the process that was undertaken to determine the park and ride, and also to ascertain the processes of the leases and the commitment to those leases. And I'm comfortable that between ourselves and the council that we'll be able to find a way forward for this kohanga, because it's certainly engrounded itself there. There are a number of families that rely on it, and this is what the board's about. This is about making sure that Auckland benefits all people and make sure that Māori are not excluded from that benefit.
That's excellent news for this kohanga, because obviously it was Marae that brought them to the notice of the Māori Statutory Board. How are other people who need your help supposed to get in touch with you?
Well, because we've been in transit with our new office, and not the flash office, but we move in July, all our systems are in place and been put in place by the Secretariat. Council is one option, but in terms of we're based in Pitt Street at the XARC building.
We have to wrap this up fairly shortly. Can I just ask you about the taniwha? What's your view on that?
I have no view on that.
Do you believe in taniwha?
I have a view on this, that matter rests solely with the mana whenua. We are tasked with the job of highlighting to Council where an adequate consultation has been undertaken. Our job is to ensure that mana whenua are absolutely involved in the development of their future and their life. If mana whenua determine there are cultural icons, cultural sites and other things that they need to protect, then the board will set about supporting that and set about making sure that the policies, plans and provisions in council documents absolutely adhere to that.
Do you believe that that's an effective use of taxpayers' money to have this incredible statutory board with very talented board members on it advising the council about taniwha?
The board's role was to ask the question whether consultation had occurred. The failing at that meeting was there was no response to our member. Our member was very concerned that the lack of consultation could lead to a number of things being desecrated, and he provided an example. My view on that is not for the board to do. The board is to direct the council to link with mana whenua and let mana whenua kōrero about their matters, their values and their culture. And I think that the board has an absolute vital role, has been seen over the last 6 months, by the lack of consultation, the lack of engagement across the whole of the region in relationship to the Auckland plan. There's a long-term plan coming, there's a unitary plan coming, there's masses of plans, and we've seen next to nothing in there for Māori. And so our job is to go hard, get those provisions in there, and at the same time, because we're on the council committees as voting members, we strongly have a role in making good decisions about protecting our Māori people.
Do you think it will actually make a difference to Māori living in Auckland?
Oh, I do so, and without it, what have we got?
Do you
the same as the last 150 years, absolutely nothing, absolutely put on the second-class citizen, and now we're away from that. What we need now is for those tribes and for those Māori organisations in Auckland to be recognised, because they're the ones doing the mahi. The board's not here to cover those jobs. It's not here to substitute the tribes. It's here to facilitate strong, genuine participation between the Auckland Council and Māori of the region.
Do you think it would have been just easier to just go with 2 appointed members on the council?
Well, it just didn't happen, Jodie. The reality is that Parliament did, by legislation, a Māori statutory board. And it's clear that the role that the board has now by having members on those committees is having a massive influence in the decision-making in that council.
Ka pai, good luck with everything. Kia ora. Back to you, Tāmati.
Kia ora.
Tēnā kōrua.